This is not the woman I was promised. The words cut through the grand hall like ice, and for a heartbeat, no one breathed. Elena Brooks stood frozen beneath the weight of a wedding dress that wasn't hers, the silk too tight across her ribs, the jeweled sleeves too heavy on her trembling arms. She wasn't supposed to be here, not under chandeliers that glittered like 1,000 watchful eyes, not standing before a throne carved from black stone. She had been sent as a replacement, a last-minute solution, a quiet lie dressed in white. Just stand there, her stepmother had whispered hours ago, voice sharp and low, and don't embarrass us. Elena had nodded because she always nodded, because her whole life had been a series of quiet obediences. But now, as the vampire king descended the steps, every instinct in her body screamed that something had gone terribly wrong. He moved without sound, 6'4", maybe more, dressed in black that seemed to swallow the light. His presence pressed against the room, heavy and cold, like winter slipping through the cracks of a door. Lucian Voss. The name alone had silenced cities. Elena lowered her gaze, heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. Don't look at him. Don't draw attention. Don't exist. That had always been the rule. But then he stopped directly in front of her. Too close. The air shifted. Her breath caught. Slowly, against her own will, Elena looked up. And everything changed. His eyes weren't just watching her. They were searching. Sharp. Ancient. As if he could see through every layer she had ever built to survive. A flicker of something crossed his expression. Not anger. Not disappointment. Something far more dangerous. Recognition. The hall stirred. Whispers broke like cracks in glass. This isn't right. That's not the sister. She's the wrong one. Elena's fingers curled into the fabric of her dress, nails pressing into her palms. She should speak. She should explain. She should apologize. But no words came, because the king was still looking at her, like she was the only person in the room, like the entire world had narrowed down to this single, impossible moment. Then he moved, one step closer, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him, sharp against her skin. His hand lifted, paused. For a second, the entire court leaned forward, waiting, watching, and then his fingers brushed hers. It was the lightest touch, barely there, but the reaction was instant. A pulse of warmth shot through Elena's hand, racing up her arm like a spark catching dry wood. She gasped. The air cracked. A faint glow flickered beneath her skin, hidden just below the surface, like something ancient waking up after a long sleep. The room went silent again, completely silent. Someone dropped a glass somewhere in the distance. It shattered, but no one reacted. No one could, because Lucian Voss did not pull his hand away. His gaze darkened, locking onto hers with terrifying certainty. No, he said quietly, almost to himself. Then louder. Steady. Absolute. This is exactly the woman I was promised. A ripple of shock tore through the court. Voices rose. Protests. Confusion. But Elena heard none of it, because the king's hand closed around hers. Firm. Unyielding. And in that moment, she understood something that made her chest tighten with fear. She had not been sent here by mistake. She had been brought here on purpose. The moment his hand closed around hers, the entire hall seemed to tilt, as if reality itself had shifted to accommodate a truth no one was ready to accept. Elena's pulse raced, each beat louder than the last, echoing in her ears like a warning she could not ignore. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. She was not supposed to be chosen. She was not supposed to be seen. A sharp voice cut through the silence. Your Majesty, this must be a mistake. A woman stepped forward from the front row of nobles, her gown shimmering like liquid silver, her expression tight with barely concealed outrage. That girl is not the one agreed upon. She's a substitute, a human nobody. The word hung in the air. Nobody. Elena Flinkid. It was a word she knew too well, a word that had followed her entire life. But Lucian did not release her hand. If anything, his grip tightened, subtle but undeniable. His gaze never left her face. I am aware, he said, his voice calm, almost quiet. Yet it carried through the chamber with absolute authority. The noblewoman hesitated, clearly not expecting that answer. Murmurs spread like wildfire. This is improper. The council will not allow it. The alliance depends on this marriage. Elena's chest tightened. Alliance. Politics. Power. None of this belonged to her. She swallowed hard, finally finding her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. I did not mean to deceive anyone. The words felt small, fragile. She forced herself to continue. I was sent here. I can leave. I will leave. For a second, she thought he might let her go, that this strange, overwhelming moment would dissolve, and she would return to being invisible again. But Lucian's expression shifted, something darker flickering beneath the surface. Not anger. Not exactly. Something possessive. Something final. No, he said. One word. Absolute. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Elena's breath caught. His thumb brushed lightly against the back of her hand. A small movement, but it sent another pulse of warmth through her veins, stronger this time, undeniable. The faint glow beneath her skin flared again, brighter, more insistent. Gasps rippled through the crowd. It is reacting, someone whispered. That is not possible. Elena stared down at her hand, panic rising in her chest. What is happening to me? She breathed. No one answered her, because everyone was looking at him. Lucian lifted their joined hands slightly, just enough for the court to see. His voice, when he spoke again, was no longer quiet. It was command. Witness. The word struck like a bell. The murmurs died instantly. This bond is not an error, he continued, each syllable precise. It is recognized. A low, tense silence followed. The noblewoman's face paled. Your Majesty, if this is true, then it means she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Elena felt it too. The weight of something ancient pressing in around her, something far bigger than a marriage, bigger than a mistake. Lucian finally looked away from her, turning his gaze toward the gathered nobles, his expression cold once more. Prepare the eastern wing, he ordered. She will be moved there immediately. Elena's heart skipped. Moved. The word echoed in her mind. This was happening too fast. Wait, she said, her voice trembling but louder now. I did not understand any of this. You cannot just decide my life for me. The room went still again. No one spoke to the king like that. No one. But Lucian turned back to her slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. Not softness, not quite, but something that made her breath catch. It was decided long before tonight, he said quietly. Elena's stomach dropped, and for the first time, she realized the most terrifying part was not that she had been chosen. It was that she might have never had a choice at all. The eastern wing felt like a different world. The moment the heavy doors closed behind her, the noise of the court vanished, swallowed by a silence so deep it pressed against Elena's ears. She stood in the center of the vast chamber, unsure if she was meant to move, breathe, or even think. The floors were polished black marble, smooth as glass, reflecting her small figure like a shadow that did not belong. Everything here was too perfect, too cold, a place built for beings who did not need warmth. You may sit, a calm voice said from behind her. Elena turned sharply. A woman stood near the doorway, dressed in deep crimson, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. Not human. Elena could feel it instantly. I am Seraphine, the woman continued. I oversee this wing. Elena hesitated, then slowly lowered herself onto the edge of a velvet chair that felt far too expensive for someone like her. Her hands rested in her lap, still trembling slightly. What is this place? She asked quietly. Seraphine studied her for a moment before answering. A sanctuary, she said. Then, after a pause, and a cage, depending on how you choose to see it. Elena swallowed. That did not help. Her gaze drifted to her hand, to where the faint glow still lingered beneath her skin. It had dimmed, but had not disappeared. That thing, she whispered. It is still there. Seraphine stepped closer, her eyes narrowing slightly as she observed Elena's hand. Of course it is, she said. It has been waiting far longer than you have. Elena's chest tightened. Waiting for what? Before Seraphine could answer, the air shifted. It was subtle at first, A change in pressure. A drop in temperature. Elena felt it before she saw him. Her breath caught as the doors opened again, silently this time. Lucian Voss entered the room like a shadow given form. The guards outside did not announce him. They did not need to. His presence filled the space instantly. Seraphine stepped back without a word, bowing her head as he passed. Elena remained seated for half a second too long before quickly standing, unsure of what was expected. Her heart pounded. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could feel that same cold radiating from him, steady and controlled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, heavy. Then his gaze dropped briefly to her hand. The faint glow pulsed once, as if responding to him. His jaw tightened. "Does it hurt?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "No," she said softly. "It feels warm." His eyes lifted back to hers. There was something unreadable there again. Something guarded. "It should not feel anything yet," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Elena frowned slightly. "What is it?" she asked, forcing the question out this time. "You keep speaking as if this is something normal, but I do not understand any of it." He did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked past her slowly, his steps silent against the marble floor, moving toward the tall windows that overlooked the dark grounds beyond. For a moment, he simply stood there, looking out into the night. Then he spoke. "There are laws older than kingdoms," he said. "Bindings that cannot be broken once they awaken." Elena felt a chill run through her. "And this is one of them?" she asked. He turned slightly, just enough for her to see his profile. "Yes." One word. Simple. Heavy. Elena's fingers curled slightly. "And what does it mean?" she pressed. This time, he looked at her fully. There was no hesitation now. No distance. "It means," he said quietly, "that your life is no longer only yours." The words settled over her like a weight she could not shake. Elena shook her head instinctively. "That is not fair," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay steady. "I did not choose this." A flicker of something crossed his expression again. Brief. Almost gone before she could name it. "Neither did I," he replied. And, somehow, that made everything feel even more dangerous. Elena's breath faltered at his words, the weight of them settling deep in her chest, heavier than the gown she still wore, heavier than the silence pressing in from the marble walls. "Neither did I." The admission lingered between them, unexpected, almost human, and for a moment she did not see a king or a creature of ancient power, but someone bound by something just as unforgiving as she was. She shook her head, stepping back instinctively, the distance between them feeling too small, too dangerous. "Then undo it," she said, her voice unsteady but firm. "If this is some kind of mistake, then fix it. Send me home. Choose someone else." The words echoed softly through the chamber, swallowed by the vast space. Lucian did not move. His gaze remained locked on her, steady, unyielding, as if measuring something she could not see. "If it were that simple," he said quietly, "you would not be here." A flicker of frustration sparked in her chest. "You keep saying that like it explains everything," she replied, her fingers curling at her sides. "It does not. You talk about laws and bindings, but I have not agreed to anything." Her voice rose slightly, the fear beneath it sharpening her words. "I am not part of your world." For a brief second, something in his expression shifted again, something almost like recognition, as if he understood that statement more than he should. But it vanished just as quickly, replaced by the same composed control. "You were never outside of it," he said. The words landed harder than she expected. Elena blinked, caught off guard. That is not true. But even as she said it, doubt crept in, quiet and unwelcome. The glow beneath her skin pulsed again, faint but undeniable, as if responding to the tension in the room. She looked down at her hand, her breath hitching. "This does not make sense," she whispered. "I've lived my entire life without anything like this." Lucian stepped closer, slow and deliberate, his presence filling the space between them once more. This time, Elena did not step back. She could not. Something held her there, not physically, but something deeper, something tied to that strange warmth still lingering in her veins. That does not mean it was not always there, he said. His voice was lower now, quieter, but no less powerful. Some things remain dormant until the moment they are meant to awaken. Elena's gaze lifted to meet his again, searching for answers in a face that revealed almost nothing. "And you think that moment is now?" she asked. He did not hesitate. "I know it is." The certainty in his voice sent a chill through her. Before she could respond, a sharp knock broke the silence. Both of them turned toward the door. It opened just enough for a guard to step inside, his posture rigid, his eyes lowered in respect. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the council has assembled. They request your presence immediately." The tension in the room shifted again, tightening like a drawn thread. Lucian's expression hardened, the brief trace of something softer disappearing entirely. "Of course they do," he murmured. He glanced back at Elena, his gaze lingering for half a second longer than necessary. "Remain here," he said. It was not a suggestion. Elena's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm not a prisoner." His eyes flickered, just once, with something unreadable. "No," he said, "but you are not free to leave either." The door opened wider, the guards stepping aside. Lucian turned without another word, his figure disappearing into the corridor beyond, the cold presence leaving the room as suddenly as it had filled it. The silence that followed felt different now, heavier. Elena stood alone in the center of the chamber, her heart still racing, her mind struggling to catch up with everything that had just happened. Slowly, she lifted her hand again, watching as the faint glow pulsed beneath her skin, brighter than before. And for the first time, she realized it was not fading. It was growing. The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed felt sharper than before, as if the room itself had been listening and was now holding its breath. Elena stood exactly where he had left her, unmoving, her eyes fixed on the empty doorway, as if expecting him to return and explain everything that had just happened. But he did not. Seconds passed, then minutes. The stillness began to press in on her from all sides. Too quiet, too controlled. She exhaled slowly, forcing her shoulders to relax, but her body refused to obey. Her pulse was still racing, her thoughts tangled in a way she could not sort through. "This is not real," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible in the vast chamber. "It cannot be." But the faint glow beneath her skin answered her, pulsing once, steady and undeniable. Elena looked down sharply, her breath catching. It was brighter now, not just a flicker, a soft, constant light, tracing faint lines. Across her palm, like something etched beneath the surface. "No," she murmured, shaking her head. "This is not happening." She moved quickly toward the tall mirror set against the far wall, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, wide-eyed, wrapped in a gown that did not belong to her life. But it was not the dress that held her attention. It was her hand. The glow had spread slightly, faint patterns forming like delicate threads of gold beneath her skin. Alive, changing. She pressed her fingers against the glass, as if that might ground her, as if it might prove that she was still the same person she had been just hours ago. But she was not. A soft movement behind her made her turn. Seraphine stood near the doorway again, silent as before, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp with quiet observation. "It is progressing faster than expected," she said calmly. Elena frowned, her heart tightening. "You speak about this like it is normal," she said, her voice strained. "Like people just wake up one day and find something like this inside them." Seraphine tilted her head slightly. "Not people," she corrected. "You." Elena let out a short, disbelieving breath. "I'm just a person," she insisted. "I have always been just a person." The words sounded weaker than she intended, because even she was starting to doubt them. Seraphine stepped closer, her gaze lowering briefly to Elena's hand before returning to her face. "That is what you were allowed to believe," she said. "There is a difference." Elena's stomach dropped. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice tightening. But before Seraphine could answer, The glow in Elena's hand flared suddenly, brighter than before, the warmth surging through her veins in a wave that made her gasp. She staggered slightly, gripping the edge of the nearby table to steady herself. "What is happening?" she breathed, panic rising fast now. Seraphine's eyes narrowed, not with fear, but with something closer to recognition. "He should not have left," she murmured under her breath. Elena barely heard her. The warmth was spreading, moving up her arm in slow, deliberate pulses, like a heartbeat that did not belong to her. Her chest tightened. "Make it stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please just make it stop." Seraphine did not move to help her. Instead, she watched, her expression shifting into something more serious, more focused. "It cannot be stopped," she said. Elena's breath hitched. "Why?" The answer came without hesitation. "Because it is not being created," Seraphine said quietly. "It is being revealed." The words settled over Elena like a weight she could not shake. Revealed. Not new. Not sudden. Something that had always been there. The glow pulsed again, stronger this time, and Elena squeezed her eyes shut, her grip tightening on the table as a single, terrifying realization formed in her mind. This was not something she had been given tonight. This was something she had carried her entire life without ever knowing. And now was waking up. The warmth did not fade. It deepened. It moved with intention now, slow and steady, like something tracing a path it already knew. Elena's grip tightened on the edge of the table as her breathing grew uneven, her chest rising and falling too fast to keep up. "This is not just a reaction," Seraphine said quietly, her voice no longer detached, but edged with something sharper. "It is answering him." Elena's eyes snapped open. "Answering who?" she demanded, though part of her already knew the answer. The air shifted before Seraphine could respond. A familiar cold swept through the room, cutting through the warmth like a blade through water. The door opened without a sound. Lucian had returned. He did not rush. He never rushed. But there was something different now, something coiled beneath his calm as his gaze locked immediately onto Elena. The glow in her hand flared brighter at the sight of him, pulsing once, twice, as if recognizing its counterpart. He stopped a few steps away, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Leave us," he said. Seraphine did not hesitate. She bowed her head once and stepped back, exiting the chamber without another word. The door closed. The silence returned. But this time it was not empty. It was charged. Elena's heart pounded as she faced him, her hands still glowing, the warmth now impossible to ignore. "You knew this would happen," she said, her voice unsteady but sharper than before. It was not a question. Lucian's gaze flickered briefly to her hand, then back to her face. "I suspected," he said. Elena let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You suspected," she repeated, "and you still left me here alone with it." A flicker of something crossed his expression again, brief and restrained. "I needed confirmation," he said. The words felt colder than the room itself. Elena shook her head, anger cutting through her fear. "I'm not an experiment," she said, her voice rising despite herself. The glow surged again, responding to the emotion, the warmth spreading further up her arm in a slow, undeniable wave. She gasped, her body tensing. Lucian moved instantly this time, not fast in a way that startled, but direct, certain. He reached for her hand, his fingers closing around her wrist with controlled pressure. The moment he touched her, the reaction intensified. The glow brightened, no longer faint, no longer hidden. Patterns formed clearly now, intricate and ancient, wrapping around her skin like a language she could not read, but somehow felt. Elena's breath caught, her free hand instinctively gripping his sleeve. "It is too much," she whispered. "I cannot stop it." His grip steadied her, firm but not harsh, anchoring her in a way nothing else had since this began. "Do not fight it," he said, his voice lower now, closer, carrying a command that was not forceful but impossible to ignore. "It is not harming you. It does not feel safe," she replied, her voice shaking. For a moment, his expression softened just slightly enough to shift something in the air between them. "It is not meant to feel safe," he said. "It is meant to bind." The words sent a chill through her, even as the warmth continued to pulse beneath her skin. Elena looked down at their joined hands, at the way the glow seemed to respond to his touch, stronger, steadier, as if it had been waiting for this connection. "What am I to you?" she asked quietly, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Lucian did not answer immediately. His gaze lingered on her hand, on the patterns that were now fully visible, undeniable to anyone who saw them. Then he looked at her, truly looked, and whatever he saw there made something shift in his expression, something deeper than before. "You are not what they think you are," he said. It was not the answer she had asked for, but it was the only one he gave, and somehow it felt far more dangerous. The words lingered between them, heavy and unfinished, like a truth waiting just beyond reach. Elena's breath slowed, but the tension in her chest did not ease. "Then what do they think I am?" she asked, her voice quieter now, but no less steady. Lucian's gaze did not waver. "A mistake," he said. "A disruption to something they have controlled for a long time." Elena swallowed, her fingers still lightly gripping his sleeve, the contact grounding her in a way she could not explain. "And you," she pressed. "What do you think I am?" For a moment, he did not answer. The silence stretched, not empty, but deliberate, as if he were choosing each word before allowing it to exist. "I think," he said slowly, "that you are the reason those controls are beginning to fail." The statement sent a quiet shock through her, not loud or sudden, but deep, like something shifting beneath the surface of everything she thought she understood. The glow around her hand pulsed again, no longer erratic, but steady, almost rhythmic now, as if it had found pattern. Elena glanced down at it, her brow tightening. "This does not feel like failure," she said. "It feels like something waking up." Lucian's grip on her wrist loosened slightly, but he did not let go. "That is exactly what it is," he replied, "and that is what makes it dangerous." A faint knock sounded at the door, softer than before, but urgent enough to draw both their attention. It opened just a fraction, and one of the guards stepped in, his posture rigid. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "The council is no longer requesting. They are demanding your presence." A flicker of irritation crossed Lucian's expression, sharp and brief. "Of course they are," he murmured. He released Elena's wrist slowly, the absence of his touch immediate, noticeable in a way she did not expect. The warmth did not disappear, but it shifted, less anchored, more restless. "They will not accept this," she said quietly, her eyes moving toward the door, toward whatever waited beyond it. Lucian followed her gaze for a moment before looking back at her. "No," he said, "they will not." There was no hesitation in his voice, no uncertainty, just fact. Elena exhaled slowly, her shoulders tightening. "Then why choose me?" The question came out softer than she intended, but it carried everything she had been holding back. Confusion, fear, a fragile edge of something else she could not yet name. Lucian studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face in a way that felt almost too intense to bear. "Because I did not choose you," he said at last. Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Then what did?" His gaze dropped briefly to her hand, to the glowing patterns that now wrapped more clearly around her skin, intricate and unmistakable. "That did," he said. The answer settled into the space between them, heavy with implication. Before Elena could respond, he stepped back, the distance between them returning, deliberate and controlled. "Stay here," he said again, his tone firm but not harsh. "Do not let anyone touch you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What?" He paused at the doorway, his hand resting briefly against the dark wood. For a second, his composure slipped, just enough for something colder, more protective to surface. "Because they will try to prove that you do not belong," he said. Elena's breath caught. "And if they cannot?" she asked. He did not look back at her this time. "Then they will try to prove that you are a threat." The door closed behind him, the sound final, echoing softly through the chamber. Elena stood there, alone once more, her heart racing as his words replayed in her mind. "A mistake." A disruption. A threat. She looked down at her hand, at the glowing patterns that no longer seemed faint or uncertain. They were clear now. Intentional. Alive. And for the first time, a new thought formed, quiet but undeniable. What they were not wrong to be afraid. The silence after he left did not last long. It shifted, tightened, like something unseen was closing in. Elena felt it before she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple. Controlled. Approaching. Her breath slowed instinctively, her body going still as the heavy doors opened without warning. This time, they did not wait for permission. 3 figures entered the chamber, each dressed in dark formal attire, their presence colder than the air itself. Not guards, not servants. Something higher, something older. Elena straightened unconsciously, her fingers curling slightly at her sides as the glow beneath her skin pulsed in response, brighter now, as if it recognized the threat before she did. The one in the center stepped forward first, his silver hair pulled back neatly, his expression calm but sharp with quiet authority. His eyes landed on her instantly, measuring, calculating. "So this is her," he said, his voice smooth but carrying across the room with ease. Elena did not answer. She could feel the weight of their attention pressing against her, heavier than anything she had faced before. The woman to his left tilted her head slightly, her gaze dropping to Elena's hand. The glow flared faintly, reacting to the scrutiny. "It is already active," she murmured, faster than predicted. Elena's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" she asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. The man stepped closer, stopping just outside her reach. "We are the ones who decide what belongs in this court," he replied. "And what does not?" The words settled like a warning. Elena's jaw tightened. "Then you already believe I do not belong." A faint smile touched his lips, but it did not reach his eyes. "Belief is irrelevant," he said. "Proof is what matters." The glow in her hand pulsed again, stronger this time, the warmth rising up her arm in a steady wave. Elena resisted the instinct to step back. She remembered Lucian's words, "Do not let anyone touch you." The woman on the left took another step forward, her gaze sharpening. "We will need to examine the mark," she said calmly, as if discussing something routine, something expected. Elena's breath caught. "No," she said immediately, the words slipping out before she could stop it. The room stilled. The man's expression shifted slightly, interest replacing indifference. "You refuse?" he asked. Elena swallowed, her heart pounding, but she held her ground. "I do not know what it is," she said, "and I do not trust you." The glow surged again, brighter than before, reacting not just to fear now, but as something else. Resolve. The temperature in the room dropped. The third figure, silent until now, finally spoke, his voice low and edged with warning. "The king's presence is not required for us to proceed." Elena felt the words like a pressure against her chest. Proceed, as if she were not standing right there, as if she were something to be handled, not a person. Her fingers tightened, the light beneath her skin flaring sharply, the patterns now unmistakable, intricate lines wrapping around her hand like something ancient and alive. The man in front of her watched it closely, his calm finally cracking just slightly. "Interesting," he said under his breath. Elena's fear sharpened into something else, something steadier. "Do not come any closer," she said, her voice low but clear. The glow responded instantly, brightening in a sudden pulse that lit the space between them. For the first time, the 3 figures hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Elena felt it, the shift. They were not just observing anymore. They were reacting. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "You feel it, do you not?" he said quietly. "It is not just awakening. It is responding to you." Elena did not answer. She did not need to, because for the first time, she felt it too. Not just warmth, not just light, something deeper, something listening, waiting. And as the glow pulsed again, stronger than ever, one thought echoed clearly in her mind. This was not something they could take from her. This was something they might not be able to control at all. The hesitation did not last. It never did with people like them. The man in the center exhaled slowly, his composure settling back into place, as if that brief moment of uncertainty had never existed. "Fascinating," he said, his voice quieter now, more deliberate. "It is not just active. It is aware." Elena's pulse thudded in her ears, but she did not step back. She could feel it clearly now. Not fear. Not exactly. Something steadier. Something rising to meet the pressure instead of retreating from it. The glow beneath her skin pulsed again, stronger than before, spreading in fine, intricate lines that no longer looked random. They looked intentional, designed. The woman to his left took another step forward despite the warning in Elena's voice, her eyes fixed on the light. "You cannot control it," she said calmly. "Not yet. That makes it unstable." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then stay away from it," she replied. The words came out sharper than she expected, but they did not feel wrong. The third figure shifted slightly, his presence pressing forward, testing the invisible boundary that had formed between them. "This is not your decision," he said. Elena felt the pressure build again, not just from them, but from the thing inside her responding to their approach, the warmth turning sharper, brighter, almost protective. She did not understand it, but she did not fight it either. The man in the center raised a hand slightly, stopping the others. His gaze remained locked on Elena, but there was something new in it now. Not just calculation. Caution. "Enough," he said quietly. The others stilled immediately. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing as the glow pulsed once more, illuminating the space between them in a soft, steady light. "This is no longer a simple irregularity," he continued. "It aligns too precisely." Elena's breath caught. "Aligns with what?" she asked, unable to stop the question. The man did not answer right away. Instead, he glanced briefly toward the closed doors, as if measuring something beyond the room. Then his gaze returned to her. "With something that should not be possible," he said. The words settled into the silence like a weight. Before Elena could press further, the doors opened again. This time, there was no subtlety. The air shifted sharply, the temperature dropping as a familiar presence filled the room with unmistakable authority. Lucian had returned. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the scene in an instant, taking in the positions, the distance, the tension. His expression hardened immediately. "You were told not to touch her," he said, his voice calm, but edged with something that made the air feel heavier. No one moved. For a moment, even the three figures seemed to hold their ground more carefully. The man in the center inclined his head slightly, a gesture that looked respectful but carried no real submission. "We have not," he said, "but we have observed enough." Lucian's eyes flickered briefly to Elena, to the glow that now wrapped clearly around her hand and wrist, brighter than it had been before. Something in his expression tightened. Not surprise. Not anymore. Recognition. The man continued, his voice steady. "You are aware of what this means." It was not a question. Lucian did not answer immediately. The silence stretched, thick with implication. Then he spoke, his voice lower than before, but carrying absolute certainty. "I am." The three figures exchanged a brief glance, something unspoken passing between them. The woman on the left was the first to break the silence. "Then the situation is no longer contained," she said. "It will draw attention." The third figure added quietly, "And not all of it will be patient." Elena felt the words like a distant echo, something larger than the room, larger than the court itself. Something beyond. Lucian stepped forward then, closing the distance between himself and Elena without hesitation, placing himself just slightly in front of her, a subtle shift that changed everything about the space. "Then we prepare," he said. The man in the center studied him for a moment longer, then nodded once, slow and deliberate. "You will not be given much time," he said. "If this is what we believe it to be, others will come." Elena's breath caught. Others. Lucian did not look back at her this time, but she felt the shift in him, the way his presence settled more firmly, more protectively, as if something had already been decided. The three figures turned without another word, their footsteps silent as they moved toward the door. As it closed behind them, the silence returned once more. But it was no longer empty. It was waiting. Elena stared at the fading reflection of the door, her heart pounding, the glow beneath her skin steady and bright. "What do they think this is?" she asked quietly. Lucian did not answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper, but it carried more weight than anything he had said before. "Not what?" he said. Elena's breath stilled. "Then what?" He turned slightly, just enough for her to see the edge of his expression, something darker, something deeper than before. "Who?" The word lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. And in that moment, Elena realized something that made everything shift again. This was never just about a bond. This was about her.